One of the most expensive aspects of non-resolved conflict is when two individuals or two departments or two branch offices or two senior leaders stay at a place where they resent each other. This is like the fallout of an explosion, a fallout of some sort of nuclear, reaction. And that's exactly what conflict is. It's a reaction to how the body responds to things that we perceive as a threat. At Aararat Consulting, we take a medical approach to the social sciences, or what you might have heard of as soft skills, but soft skills aren't soft at all. They're extremely hard skills to deal with, because human psychology has got an almost infinite amount of variables as to how people think, or the things that they believe, or the things that they'll say, and how I react to the things that other people say. In other words, human dynamics is extremely complicated. And if you're in a management position, then you're going to be dealing with conflict, because that is part of being in management. As we said earlier, if you ascend or get promoted into a management position, you're not getting promoted to do more tasks or more procedures or more protocols faster. No, you got promoted into management. Now your job is to get people to work together better, and people are not robots. People are not task operators. I mean, wouldn't it kind of be nice if all of our employees were robots, because then they would never complain, and then they would never, have arguments, and, they would never call in sick when they're not, and they wouldn't be backbiting, and they wouldn't be gossiping, because that's what you end up dealing with most as a manager, is the human dynamics, which has nothing to do with whatever it is your company produces or manufactures. So you have to be a psychologist. And that's what we're teaching you to do here, is to use a medical approach to corporate psychology. And in the last video, we explained that your job is to make sure that things don't explode. Your job is to make sure that things don't get out of control, because in chemistry, when a reaction goes out of control, ultimately it explodes. And when it explodes, there's lots of damage. You don't want the damage, because the damage is interpersonal. So if you've got two, say, good leaders, and let's just say that they both run different departments, and you're in senior management, or you're the CEO, and they're fighting with each other. So, sales is sales is arguing with advertising, okay? Or shipping is arguing, with manufacturing, and the two heads of your departments both think they're right. In their perception, they're in the right and the other party's in the wrong, and now they're fighting with each other. If you can't resolve the conflict, then what ends up happening is something called, inadvertent sabotage. In construction, this is very interesting how sabotage works. For people that are electricians, and many times, if the people that put up the drywall don't put up the drywall appropriately so the electricians can run their wire, then they'll just take screwdrivers and they will punch holes in the drywall. So the drywall has to be replaced. They will actually physically do damage, like blatantly obvious damage, but it's their way of saying to the drywallers, you didn't do it right, don't screw that up again. So in the hierarchy of things in the trades, the electricians are a higher guild, if you want, than the drywallers. But that is exactly what they'll do, as childish as it sounds. Well, a lot of the times when we ascend into management or senior management, we're a little more sophisticated than that. But it still doesn't mean that we can't act out of resentment. And when we act out of resentment, now you've got two departments or two branch offices warring with each other, and it will slow down your production. And in a previous example, we said, let's say that you manufacture D9 caterpillars, like these humongous earth-moving pieces of machinery, and they're millions and millions of dollars each. But if you don't produce or manufacture or deliver this D9 caterpillar to where it's supposed to be on time, then this major construction company that's maybe been doing business with you for 15 years will go to your competition and start buying earth-moving equipment from them, all because two of your managers got into a destructive mindset and they decided, I'll show him. So this destructive mindset is what we're talking about now. We're going to defuse de-escalate and diminish this escalation of emotions that cause these destructive reactions. And the way we're going to do that is by understanding the biochemistry and understanding how certain hormones or chemicals in our bloodstream cause physiological change. And the one we're going to talk about today, as far as conflict is concerned, is adrenaline. Now, adrenaline is the natural drug that is made in our adrenal gland. Adrenaline, adrenal gland. Okay, pretty simple. And when the body secretes adrenaline, a few things happen. One, the heart starts beating faster. Two, your blood vessels start to dilate. And when I say dilate, I mean they get bigger. So as your heart's beating faster and as your blood vessels increase the amount of volume of blood they compress, you actually get more oxygen to your extremities. In this case, your extremities, your arms and legs. So when the body's getting more oxygen to the arms and legs, it provides the opportunity for the body to either run faster or hit harder, okay? So adrenaline is also called the fight or flight drug because when we get threatened and when the adrenal gland produces more adrenaline and when our heart pumps faster and our blood vessels dilate and more oxygen gets to our extremities, the body's actually preparing itself to either beat something up with your hands or run away from it with your legs. But in a boardroom, you don't get to run away. And in the boardroom, you don't get to start pounding on the person you've got a conflict with. That's just not socially acceptable, is it? So what ends up happening is this adrenaline is building, just like pressure in a chemical reaction, and something's going to explode. And when something explodes, it's typically when somebody says something or does something that they later regret. And we've all seen this. We've all seen this with, I don't know, with our parents, with our siblings, with an ex-spouse. We say or do something we can't take back. And in the aftermath, we say, I just lost control. Things just got out of control. Your job in management is to defuse, de-escalate, and diminish the destruction that can occur if this adrenaline starts to get produced in what's called a positive feedback cascading reaction. And what I mean by a positive feedback or positive feedback loop, a cascading reaction, is it just keeps building. So this is what ends up happening when people are arguing with each other. They will say something and they'll defend themselves. They stamp their feet, they cross their arms, and they assert themselves. Then the opposite party, who isn't listening, they just assert themselves. And now you've got two people warring with each other. They're just shooting back and forth at each other verbally. But because the parties aren't listening to each other, then when I shoot at you verbally and you shoot back at me verbally and neither of us are listening, then I start to get frustrated. And when we get frustrated, that wonderful adrenal gland in our brain starts to produce more adrenaline. Effectively, it says, fight harder, hit harder, right? Yell longer, things like that. And things escalate. So your job, if you want to understand the medical aspect of conflict resolution and the biochemistry and the neurochemistry and the physiology, what you need to understand is you need to get the warring parties not to get to a point of escalation whereby something explodes. You want to do the opposite. And you want things to calm down, and the reason that you want to calm down is so that nobody does something they regret later, something they can't take back, something that's irreparable, because if something like that happens, it's usually extremely costly and often costly in terms of lawsuits. So how do you defuse, de-escalate, or diminish the destruction? You just have to understand how adrenaline works. You have to understand how adrenaline works and a number of other biochemicals in our brain, our neurophysiology. And if you can understand the medical approach to how these chemicals work, then you can take proactive, preventative steps. That's what we call it in medicine, preventative medicine. You can take preventative steps to stop the escalation and to stop an explosion that's going to cause irreparable damage and crazy high costs. And the way that you do that is by teaching the people who are in conflict how to slow down by doing one thing. The one thing that will de-escalate, defuse, and diminish the destruction. And that one thing is how to ask probing questions.